Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Think and Grow. Today, we have a mega mentor with us, Brian Meidam. Brian is actually, he wears multiple hats, guys and gals. He is a coach. He coached me in real estate a long time ago. And he does so many things. I'm so excited to kick it off with Brian and hear his story of how he really turned into this guy that is just out there crushing it every day. Brian, get us started with some of your backstory. Tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Pleasure to be on your show. So yeah, I started. Well, I guess just some basic background. I'm a husband and father of three kids. My kids are 15, 13, and 11. Just had one that started driving, which is a whole scary situation in itself.
Good luck with that.
It makes me feel old.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got started. Well, I kind of went the, I guess, traditional route. Went to college, got a finance degree, and was working in the finance field for some time, and then transitioned to being self-employed and officially unemployable. So
Cool.
Yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I live in the Milwaukee area with my family. We're heavily involved in the community, and yeah, so I guess ask away.
Yeah. So give us that transition part where you go to college, like you said, finance guy, working for a couple of different finance firms, and all of a sudden, tell us how that all came about from where you were like working for a, financial organization, stocks, bonds, all that kind of stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, hey, I think I want to be a real estate investor when I grow up, right?
Sure, yeah. So I was working on the bond side of the market as an analyst and trader, and I was very fortunate because I got to work with some wicked smart people, and I learned a lot about that side of the business and business in general. Excuse me. So I'm very fortunate for that. But I knew that I just wasn't wired for that business long term.
Yeah.
Having an ulcer in your early 20s,
Dude.
and it, I just the I had the golden handcuffs though, because I got paid very, very well
Yeah.
at a young age. I was having some success there, but I knew long term it's not what I wanted to do. So I started doing real estate part time on the side and started having some success, getting some deals. And then I started doing some short sales. And that, for people not familiar with short sales, it's basically, um, you know, someone that's facing a financial difficulty, but they can't sell their house because they owe $200,000 on it. It's only worth 150.
Right.
And that,
Underwater, so to speak.
they're underwater. So, and at that time, the market was dropping. Um, and so I started basically going in and working with these sellers and negotiating bank debt to create the equity so they could get out from underneath the house. I could buy it. And so I would have to, during my work day, I would sneak off into the conference room and make calls to loss mitigation reps at the banks. And I was, wheeling and dealing files. And it was great because like I could sell these things as fast as I could get them done.
Wow.
Investors were just hungry for them. So it was perfect timing for me to be in that market. Um, I left my corporate job in April of 07. It held me back just because bonuses were paid out in February of every year. So I needed to stick around for that. And I was going to leave the prior February. And I guess just backing up, like, how did I get to the point of having the courage to leave? It was scary. I'm not going to lie. And I'm a relatively conservative person.
Right.
So, excuse me. So what my wife and I did is we lived on less than we saved 100% of my income.
Nice.
And lived on less than her income.
Wow.
So what helped is we were living in a duplex. So we had, one side helping to, pay the mortgage. So our quote unquote mortgage was very minimal. And we were fortunate that we were able to, both graduate college without having any college debt.
Wow.
We both worked a ton during college to make sure that was possible. Nowadays, I think you could work a ton and you're still going to have college debt just because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
But we're able to come out of it without having any debt. So I'm very fortunate. My wife is not high maintenance. We were at that time, we were clipping coupons, and the whole idea was, do for 2 to 3 years what others aren't willing to do, so we can do what they can't do for a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so it was, I'm sorry,
Did,
go ahead.
were you all didn't have kids by that time, or
No, well, by the time I left, we had one. But
Okay.
when we started the process, the plan to pull the eject button, we didn't have kids. But then so then it was a whole nother thing of like, you know, if my wife keeps her job, how long is that going to happen? Then we've got to deal with health insurance
Yeah.
and, figure all that stuff out. But the nice thing of the way we set it up of having 1.5 years of income in the bank before I left is I didn't have to go out and be a motivated buyer in my real estate business.
Yeah.
I could wait for those deals to come, so I didn't have the pressure. That being said, I still put the pressure on myself, which led to some other issues because it was the fear of failure that was like driving me, and it wasn't always a healthy driver. So I remember early on, I had an office in my basement, and it was like being a crack addict, knowing there's more crack in your basement. It's like, for me, there's always more work to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would come upstairs, I would eat dinner, and then I'd go back downstairs and I would disappear until 1, 2 in the morning, working on more marketing stuff,
Yeah.
looking at more deals. And it was like there was always more work to do, and I was scared of failing, so I would just work myself through it. That was my answer.
Yeah.
so
And then,
starting out, what was your strategy? Was it more so doing the marketing and talking to sellers as opposed to looking on MLS or working with a realtor?
right, it was more direct. It was direct to seller. So I was working on that short sale business. So I left in April of 2007, and then I was very fortunate because in December of 2007, kind of all the stars aligned for me, and I made my income in that 1 month of December 2007 replaced my income for an entire year at my well-paying corporate job. So everything just got so I just got very lucky and very fortunate. And that being said, I worked very hard to get to that point to being lucky, but it's still everything aligned. So that gave me a confidence boost, a capital boost, and kind of proved to myself like, okay, I can do this business and be successful. But going back to what we were talking about before is like the whole fear of failure thing that was driving me in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
I was working nonstop. And, there were points where my wife would be talking to me and she's like, "You're not hearing a single thing I'm saying to you right now. You're looking at me, but you're not hearing anything I'm saying." And I would be like, huh?
Earth to Brian. Earth to Brian.
Exactly.
Come in, Brian.
Exactly.
One more question though. So did you find that your background in finance helped you when you were negotiating with the people in the banking, contacting
short
these
sale stuff.
short sale stuff? Because that can be difficult to get a person on the phone, talk to the right person to interact with, and even get them to even consider, doing business with you.
I think it helped, but it wasn't 100% necessary. I think, but just having like kind of a business background, so you could picking up on the lingo, and I would try and back into their numbers to figure out what they were, what numbers how did they get to the number that they did. So maybe some of that math was helpful, but I don't, could someone do it without it? For sure. Maybe it would take a little bit longer. Like, I'm not the brightest bulb in the pack by any means. I just, I think I've been willing to outwork people when I've needed to. So I think that has benefited me. But back to, where it hasn't benefited me, at one point, my wife, was like, hey, this self-employed thing isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, you're like, you're never around.
Yeah.
And when you are around, you're present. You're here, but you're not mentally present.
Right.
So that was like a big, like, slap in the face, wake up call that I needed. Because at that point I wasn't being a good husband or a good father. We had a young boy, and it just, it took me a while. So what I did then is I got my office out of my house. The laptop stayed at the office. I wasn't working at home, and I would just force myself to keep the crack at the office, like the more the work, right? And there's still times where it's, now that we have these, stupid smartphones, it's easy to take it all with you, but like, you just, and it's still a struggle for me at times where it's just like, okay, this is family time. I'm not, whatever is happening and buzzing needs to get ignored, and do not disturbs getting put on so I can be present with my family. But it's, to say it's still not a challenge at times, I'd be lying if I said that.
Just turn it off, Brian. Turn that damn phone off. We're having dinner now. So what I'm curious about with you talking about this, all this, literally eating away at you in your 20s, you end up with this, what'd you say, the ulcer, right? And then, but it didn't really, it kept manifesting in different ways. Tell us how you transcended that and figuring out, wow, this is, even though now I'm self-employed and I'm, I got more control, I'm still struggling with this issue of not doing this in a healthy way. Tell us about that.
Well, I think what finally got me over it was like sitting down and like really looking at the numbers. Because like, what kind of made it worse, even though I proved to myself that I could be successful in the business, is when my wife left her job and I was the sole provider for our family, and we had babies.
Yeah.
We had at the time, 2 kids in diapers, and I was, looking at the expenses there, and like, we were fine, but still it was like, if I stop working, eventually things aren't fine, right? Because it's all on me,
right,
to provide. But I think just going through the numbers, and then at some point, I really don't know when it was, I just was able to like get this mental calm over me that says, okay, like, Brian, like, stop worrying. Everything you previously worried about has never come to fruition.
Yeah.
And like, there's no reason for it anymore. Like, so I think I had to like mentally make it, to get over it. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but it
totally does.
It wasn't like,
it sounds like, it sounds like you're like, hey, I have arrived. You gained all that confidence, and that had to be a scary time. You're like, holy cow, now there's more pressure on me because I'm the sole provider. Now I really got to make sure that, God forbid, what if I get hit by a bus or whatever, right? So there's that pressure. So that's incredibly awesome how you managed to figure that out, that, look, I have to maintain my health. I have to do all these things. You've got a lot of talent. And the other thing I want to talk about was the team of your wife and yourself, and how you guys, you guys are like, it sounds like from the beginning going, through college and all that, you guys are working together. Tell us about the teamwork necessary. And, Zelda and I, we do the same thing, right? We have each other's back. And I've been in situations prior to that where it is difficult and it's an uphill grind, right? When that person, your other, is like, doesn't have your back like that, right?
Yeah, I think like, if your spouse or partner is not on the same page with you,
right,
it ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
Or it might work, but not long term, because someone's not going to be happy. So I was very fortunate that my wife was very encouraging, wanting me to be self-employed, which took a lot of faith on her part because, we were both, she was making very good money at the time. I was making very good money.
Mhm.
And, we had the dual income, we were dinks, dual income, no kids. And, um, and it was like, we could be selfish with our time because we didn't have anyone else we had to share it with. Right.
Yeah.
And then kids come along, and because prior to kids, we just both worked because that's what we did. And that's how I was raised. It's just kind of a bit of a workaholic. So, and then kids came, and then priorities changed because I had to, and it took me a while to figure that out.
Yeah.
But my wife was very supportive through it. And she wanted me to leave my corporate job before I did, because I was doing real estate more than part-time and still working my other job full-time. So yeah, she was a trooper through it, because it was not that it was like a mess of any sort. It was just, it's a massive risk, or at least I felt it was a massive risk.
Yeah.
Just because I'm conservative. But I'll say, like, for other people, I had a big crutch to starting my business. My crutch was I had a good 6-figure income paying job.
Yeah.
And for some people, having that is a detriment. They need to have no crutch, and it's either I'm going to be in the homeless shelter, I'm going to make this business work. Right. And so some people need that motivation, to not have the crutch to really catapult. And when I had the real estate coaching business, and we would interview people before they came in to figure out, okay, is this going to be a fit? Should we accept the person or not? And, my partner and I, sometimes we would battle over it, and whether we thought the person would be a fit. And, some people that we brought in, that had a business background, and like they were really savvy, and we thought they would just crush it.
Yeah.
Just bombed.
Yeah.
Right. And they did the business, they were excited about it, and then life got in the way. And a month or two in, they were completely mentally checked out and onto something different. And then we bring in someone else, and we're like, man, I don't know if we should, we charge we charge an upfront deposit that people would earn back. And then there was a monthly fee. Plus they had to invest in their own business and marketing. It's like, man, if we take their deposit, like, I almost feel like we're taking like 90% of their net worth.
Yeah.
And is this the right thing to do as a coach? And then some people we turned away, and then they spent 2.5 times that with some national guru, and then they still came back to us for help. So, right. So it was like, well, so we took a chance on some of those people, and they had no crutch, and they blew it out of the water. And so as much as we thought we were good at interviewing people and figuring out who was going to fit in what area, it was up to that individual. And both people had the same information, whether they were, we were coaching, they both had the same information. Just one person chose to take it and run and do the business, and the other person, they allowed life to get in the way.
Yeah.
And other
I
distractions.
know one of those. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to get this in because this is so beautiful. I know one of those back to the wall guys very intimately.
Yep. I was going to let you bring that up.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Question in. So just going back to your wife, and like you said, some people let life get in the way. Did we talked about risk and risk tolerance, and you said you tend to be more risk averse. Now, is your wife more risk? Is she more comfortable with risk, or how would you gauge that between the two of you?
I would say, as we're talking together about different situations, about a business decision, she's usually very supportive of which direction I want to go, but also willing to bring up the other side, the negatives, as we'll talk, the T-chart, right? The pros and the cons to something. But I think there's times where she has more confidence in myself than I do, especially like when starting out. which was encouraging, right?
Yeah.
But there's times where I failed, and it was a decision that I made, and it's like, well, okay, it's time to put your big boy pants on and suspenders and put your boots on, because it's going to get messy for a while, and you just got to figure this stuff out. I had some issues with rental properties early on when I bought them that I should not have bought, and they were a nightmare to deal with. I had the different clientele that I was not used to dealing with, and safety issues, and I was totally green. Totally green. And so just working through that stuff, there were nights I was not sleeping well, because I was dealing with these tenant issues that I did not know how to deal with. And looking back now, they're all like small things, right? But at the time they were like consuming. And but my wife was, so I guess back to your question, Zelda, she's probably more level-headed than I am, in business wise. But I'm probably more of the risk taker than she is, I would say. I don't know if she would agree with that totally.
Okay.
So it's kind of weird because she has zero involvement really in our business. Doesn't really even know where we own houses, nor does she care, which is fine. So yeah, she kind of she volunteers a ton at the kids' schools and she does that stuff. She'll help out in the office on occasion when needed. But otherwise she doesn't really have any interest.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Talk more about, Brian, that whole, you decided to get into rentals, and it reminded me of a guy I met a couple years ago I met at, all these different networking events that we attend, and I'm like, so just curious, I'm a very curious person. And I'm like, how many, he talking rentals? Yeah, I got a couple rentals. I want to get 1,000. I'm like, 1,000? I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, be careful what you wish for. And then I was thinking, I just don't ever see that happening. And like a lot of people we see, right? A lot of people coming and going. This guy is gone. So I don't even know if he's in real estate anymore.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, like the number of units that people, I think it's kind of like a chest pounding thing.
Yeah.
Right. Where, like, to me, it's like, well, let's talk cash flow, right? At the end of the day. And even like, when I first started out, I was all focused like, oh, I want a big net worth number. Well, that number and $4 can buy you a hamburger at McDonald's. So net worth doesn't matter. It's what is it's cash flow, that the only thing that matters at the end of the day. Because you could have a massive net worth and negative cash flow and you're going down, right?
Right. Yeah.
So to me, it's all about cash flow and building, long-term wealth through cash flow.
How big is my money pile, right?
Yeah, real money, not, net worth, you can't eat net worth.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just to give a clearer picture for everybody, you're talking about, okay, on paper, I have a net worth, all my assets I accumulate are 1.5 million, but I got $10 in the bank, right?
Right.
That's not going to do you any good.
Zero cash reserves.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people, that net worth has grown as real estate prices have gone up, right?
Yeah.
So their net worth maybe went from 200,000 to 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Which is just like, oh, wow, that's great, which is good, right?
Yeah.
But now, let's say next year the market tanks down, and now you've got your net worth goes from 1.5 million to 500,000. You just lost $1 million in net worth, right? But your cash flow the entire time did not change, potentially, right? Let's just assume it did not. So that net worth, like, that's just a number, but your monthly take home and cash flow is spendable cash. It's not just a line item on your financials. It's actual, cash in the bank. And to me, that's the number that matters.
Right.
So Brian, you talked about we were doing in part of the coaching program that Patrick was part of. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you remember that a lot of maybe newbie investors, but maybe even investors that have been in it for a while, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you can share with our
Sure.
listeners?
Good question.
And I think this applies to any business, whether your listeners are in real estate or, you name the business. It's inconsistency in marketing.
Yeah.
People stop marketing, you're pretty much dead in the water.
Right.
Okay.
So what I always encourage people to do is figure out, the next 12 months, how much can you afford to spend total, break that down monthly, and then your job is to get that money spent every single month. Because the weird thing with marketing is, I always like to tell people they have at least, 3 to 5 marketing channels going at one time.
Yeah.
Because, this month, let's say your radio ads might be taken off, and next month you got the same radio ads and you got nothing coming in. Your ads are still running, but for some reason, the leads aren't coming in. But now I'll say your direct mail that wasn't working last month is working this month.
Yeah.
So it's weird how it works, but that's what happens. So I see where people fail is they stop having faith that marketing works, and they become inconsistent with it, or they just turn it off completely, and then they're dead in the water. Because regardless of your business, most of us are in a marketing business, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're marketing to build out a coaching platform, or you're marketing to sell widgets, or you name it, everyone's marketing. So if you stop that ad spend on that, the funnel is going to dry up. And the next thing you'll be forced to market your business when you stick a for sale sign out there. So at one point or another, you're going to be advertising, whether it's advertising to grow your business or advertising to sell it because you haven't grown it.
Yeah.
You'll be advertising at some point.
That's a really good point. Thank you.
So what we like to do is, bring people like you on so that those people that are just starting out, whether, like you said, I think you brought up a good point. Consistency is the key, right? And you are that model. I was thinking earlier, what am I going to say about Brian? I'm like, Brian's the best male model I know, you guys. He's not the male model you think I'm talking about, right?
I got a face for radio.
He's that model that you want to emulate, right? In terms of, if I'm going to get into business, or if you had the ability, a golden ticket, and you could follow Brian around for a month, man, that would be awesome, because they could get to see you in action, right? Consistency and all that. But tell us about, like, all the people you said, you touched on it earlier, the people that are coming into the program. What is the most important things along with marketing for them to do right out of the gate?
Focus on, I call them IGAs, income generating activities.
Okay.
I think for a lot of people, regardless of the business, there's so much stuff to do. There's every day, like you could work 24 hours a day as a business owner, especially in a startup, and there's always more to do.
Yeah.
But the stuff, you have to focus on the stuff that makes you money. So the income generating activities. And I think for a lot of people, like they're scared being in business, so they focus on the stupid crap that doesn't matter, like the design of their business card.
Yeah.
There are the t-shirts that they want to order and what logo they're going to put on it.
Yeah.
It's like that crap doesn't matter. But they're busy working on their business, right?
Yeah.
That's how they're justifying it to themselves. Oh, I'm working on my business, but that stuff does not affect the bottom line. And if you've got bills to get paid, you got to, even if you don't, if you're trying to build that business, you have to focus on the income generating activities. Bottom line.
Yeah, that's true. That's really good. Because you're right. It is easy to get caught up in that other stuff.
Hanging out in the kiddie pool where it's nice and safe, and no, I like it over here. The water's warm. It's nice and shallow. I'm not going to drown, and staying in their comfort zone, and you got to get outside of that.
Yeah.
Right?
So
Right.
how do you encourage or prompt people or, motivate people to get out of that kiddie pool?
For the longest time, I had a post-it note on the top of my monitor here. It says, what IGAs did I perform today?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the one below that said, how many people did I talk to?
Mm.
Because if you're not talking to people and you're not doing income generating activities, and sometimes those are one and the same,
Yeah.
your business is not growing.
All right. So see
or
the
improving.
people, talk to the people.
Yeah, and
Talk
like
to everybody.
for some people, like talking to people is a scary thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm one like at a networking meeting, I am totally content in the corner by myself, not talking to anyone. And if someone finally comes up to talk to me, it's like, whew, thank you. Like, because I didn't have to go introduce myself to someone. So that's just kind of my personality. And I've gotten better at it. But when I would go to these networking meetings starting out, I would force myself before I left, I had to talk to 10 people. I had to. And
Yeah.
I would be like, good thing I doubled up on my deodorant that night because I would be sweating bullets. Right? Like it scared me to death. But eventually you do it enough. And then the next time it sucks, but it doesn't suck quite as bad. Right. And then the third time you run into some of the people you met the first time, so it's not quite as bad. And like it just gets easier and easier and less uncomfortable. I would say I'm still not comfortable with it.
Really?
No, wow. It's still like, and if I have to speak in front of the room, I don't enjoy it. I do it. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I've forced myself to get over it for the most part, because it affects my business, right? If you can't network with people and you can't pick up the phone and make cold calls to people, if your business requires that, and build vendor relationships or whatever it is, you're gonna have a hard time. So that's why that note said, how many people did I talk to today? And before I leave this meeting, I have to talk to 10 people, because I mentally had to get over myself and get over the fear of stumbling over what I'm going to say or whatever my internal fear is, and just do it. And it took me some time, but I'm like, when I travel, my wife thinks I'm crazy. She'd be like, who'd you go to dinner with? I'm like, oh, I went by myself and it was glorious.
That's funny.
But that being said, it's a little different now, right? With my wife and I, we have a crazy schedule with kids and sports activities. So it's like go, 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 go all the time. Yeah. So if I can have like a little downtime,
right.
I enjoy it. But my wife, for her to be traveling and go to dinner by herself, like she would be very uncomfortable and order, Uber Eats into the hotel room.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm totally content hanging by myself, which she thinks I'm just weird, which I might be. I probably am a little bit.
We all are a little, Brian.
Yeah.
I remember being in the program, and I don't know who said it, if you said it or if Eric said it or whatnot, but what stuck in my head is you got to, being at those master meetings we would have, somebody said it, you got to get out there. I don't know if it was in a one-on-one conversation, but you got to talk to people. And that's what I did early on. And I'm like this introvert. I'm like you, the wall's nice and comfortable over here. Just this is fine.
Right.
But, getting back to what I said earlier, I was highly motivated and I had to move quickly. So I'm like, yeah. So immediately I just started talking to everybody, and I want to get this in for everybody. What I started doing recently, now that we're doing the podcast, is I talk to everybody, Brian, everywhere I go. I'm at the gym. So what do you do? And I'm finding people that, make good guests for the podcast. And I met a guy that was a handyman guy. Good, it's amazing. So the more you do it, even though you're uncomfortable, and every once in a while you'll get somebody that'll be like, they'll be gruffy, like, don't talk to me or whatever. And you're like, okay, fine. But I've gotten better at picking up on the body language and figuring out, okay, if somebody's a little bit friendly to you, then you can you just figure it out as you go along, like you did with your rentals, right?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, it's a good point. You just have to force yourself to do it and get out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, and context is key. I mean, I remember when I first started with my rentals, there was a strip mall across the street, and I remember I went to every single store and I would just say, "Oh, here's a flyer." I was handing out flyers and going to several finance banking places and just handing my flyer or just talking to whomever. So it depends on the context. Sometimes it's easier to do that than in other contexts. So it's really interesting.
You know, it's so funny because Zelda and I started going to those meetings. I don't know when you started, when Eric and Dan started their REIA group.
I met you at the Ring. I remember you at the Ring, right? You were a part of that group.
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the point I wanted to make is Zelda was at the very first meeting, June 2009. I started going in October of 2009, eventually joined the program. So here we are, both of us are going pretty much every month for a whole year, never said a word to one another. I get in the program, I'm like, "Hey, Lucky, how's it going?" She's like, "Lucky, what are you talking about?" Because she kept winning stuff from the raffle, right? That was like broke the seal and was the beginning of it all, you know?
That was your pickup line.
Yeah, he did that about 3 times. Finally, I said, "Why do you keep calling me Lucky?" And he goes, "Because you're always winning." I was like, "Oh.
Okay.
I guess so." I didn't even notice.
That's funny.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well,
So tell us about, now that you've got this, the boat is out of the water, it's been running smoothly. How do you maintain that edge, right? Because another thing that is difficult is once prosperity kicks in, it's easy to go rest on your laurels and go, "Hey, this is nice. I'm cooking, I'm moving along." How do you continuously motivate yourself to keep the machine rolling, right? Because you're Mr. Consistent in my eyes, right? You're just constantly, you've got, we've seen your Plan B HomeBuyers, your company, letters here and there. We went to see our attorney and your letter popped up. So.
Yeah. He had the state property and he was showing us all the bunch of mailings and there was Plan B.
Yeah, I know this guy. So tell us more about that.
I think it's and early on I wanted to have be this big massive investor in Milwaukee and be this big fish. And I realized pretty early on that was just purely ego driven.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of unattractive things that came along with that. And so I've always had a very small business from early on. I don't know for how long now, I've had a full-time office staff of one that works for me, and then I have a couple people overseas. So I'm very small and nimble. I have no desire to be a massive company. If you look at business growth, I think it's always, you have to get better before you get bigger. Otherwise you just have bigger problems.
Yeah. Good point.
Right. Some people just I want to grow. I have no desire really to grow. I want to maintain and be highly profitable. And, if I need to shift my business because of what's going on, I can shift my business. And it's, I think if you look at a big cruise ship in the ocean, and if it wants to take a hard right, you watch the horizon in the front of the ship and it's a very slow move, right?
Yeah.
So in the housing business, I equate that to some friends of mine that have very big businesses going. They've got acquisitions department, dispositions department. They've got teams of this, teams of that. And when the market turns, they're the ship that's moving very, very slow because they're too big, right? They've got massive inventory, a pipeline built up of deals closing, and they can't shift when they need to. When they can, it just takes forever to make that final adjustment. And I can shift
Right.
tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not quite tomorrow. It's a different situation because I don't have that massive infrastructure. And I've been very fortunate and blessed where I'm to the point now where I can pick and choose what deals I want to do. I don't have to do X number of deals.
Yeah.
And like some of these big guys, they have massive overhead. So they may have their first 10 deals that they do a year just goes to get them to break even.
Wow.
To cover overhead, So, I realized like I'm going to stay small. I'm going to be profitable consistently. I'm going to consistently market. And like I spend a lot of my time figuring out, different marketing strategies or things that we can tweak. We've failed doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we're going to try this out. We're going to give it a good try. So we have data to figure out if it's going to work or not. If it doesn't work, okay, we failed. Let's stop doing it and let's go back to what we were doing and do more of it, or let's figure something else out. So it's constantly, I think, adjusting to the market. A big thing for real estate investors was texting. And my phone just gets blown up every day with people spamming me. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that because I don't like it. But I know it works. We're just not doing it. But I think it goes back to having that marketing plan and being consistent with it.
Yeah.
And because a lot of in my business, real estate investing, a lot of people come and go.
Right.
And a lot of people come and go. So I think the consistent people have had a consistent marketing plan.
Yeah.
And not taken crazy risk. And sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't do.
Right.
And which sometimes is hard. And especially like if you look at the last year and a half or so, the markets went bananas. Right. So everyone's a genius right now.
Yeah.
Because everyone that's rehabbed, every mistake they've made, the market has carried people out of the mistakes.
Yeah.
And it has not exposed it. Well, as the market turns, they're going to be exposed. And I think the same thing is in other businesses, right? That have prospered through the pandemic, and on the outside of it is they could have overspent on staff. They could have been wasteful with their budgeting, and everything, their profits just kept going up because their margins increased and everything's been good. And it's good until it's not. So you have to prepare for when it's not, and, stay lean and just, work on those margins. And our volume's been down, but our margins have maintained very well.
Nice. Yeah. So talk about how, for the person that's the business owner that like yourself, that has been cooking along for a while now, excuse me. But just talk about, like, give us how things were when you first started. I like to refer to as the shifting sand, right? Because nothing stays the same. So back when I first started, for example, MLS, mostly what I was doing was getting houses off MLS, right? But that dries up. So now you have to keep adjusting. And I think that's really important lesson for everybody who's in business, no matter if they've been in it for a couple of years, 5, 10, whatever, 20 years.
Yeah, I think you always have to, be willing to adjust quickly. Otherwise your business is just going to suffer drastically. And I think a lot of times that means listening to your employees. As business owners, I think it's easy sometimes to think that we've got all the answers. When we only may have part of it, or we may not. Sometimes our employees, they're in the trenches every day, and you just have to be a better listener instead of going in and just making changes that you think are right. Talk to your employees, talk to other people, figure out what's going on. Like when I was trying to figure out this business during the early part of the pandemic, what was going to happen, I was talking to, new home construction people, people in manufacturing business, radio station owner, like talking with the radio station guy, like, hey, tell me what's going on. Are your advertisers still spending money, or is everyone pulling back? And what's your funnel look like? So I was talking with as many people as I could to try and get a pulse on things. At the end of the day, I still didn't feel confident in my strategy, but no one did, right? You have to consume the information, digest it, and then figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And, maybe you hedge your bet somewhat, but you can't do nothing, right? You have to take action. And the paralyzed business owner is the dead business owner.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to adjust and take those risks. And the reality is not everyone can stomach being a business owner. Some people they having that W-2 income is the best thing for them because they don't like the stress of it. And it's not an environment they can thrive in. And for other people, like I said before, like I'm unemployable. I could not go work for anyone else anymore. I'm wrecked.
Right.
And I would not fit well in corporate America. But back, the shifting sand, I think that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Is, if that sand's shifting and you're not moving, you're sinking, right?
Right.
So you have to be able to take those risks and stomach those risks. And, sometimes it means diversifying them so you don't get stuck. But when stuff's not working, like you have to cut bait and move on.
Right.
And, the last real estate market, I know a lot of people that lost everything. And it wasn't the splat, think about jumping out of a plane. It wasn't the splat that killed them, it was the fall. Because they were like grabbing onto every straw. They were robbing Peter to pay Paul. But once they finally said, okay, I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off, that was like the relief point, right? But the way down is what killed them.
Yeah.
So one question I want, how do you challenge yourself every day to just kind of stay ahead?
I don't know if I do.
Interesting.
Okay.
I don't know if I do. I think I used to do more of it. But the whole slogan, like rise and grind, like I'm over that. Like that's not quality of life for me. And so I think there are times where I've had to do my own like mind games to make business interesting again. For example, like, because it becomes, I think in any business, it can become a bit monotonous over time.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, is this fun anymore? Like,
Right.
like I want to do stuff that's fun. So how do I make real estate fun if it's boring? And for me, it was working on building a retirement account from zero. And how quickly could I build that up to a number that I thought was fun? So that was like my game. And I was focused on that. But to get to that, to make that successful, I had to get my business successful so I could grow that. So I think that was maybe a roundabout way to answer your question. So I think playing those different games to make things fun, because sometimes the reality is sometimes owning your business sucks.
Yeah.
It's not all rosy all the time.
Right.
Sometimes it's just, misery. And when it rains, it pours, and you just got to put your, belt and suspenders on and work your way through it and come out the other side. A lot of people quit. That's why a lot of businesses fail, right? They're not willing. One, they don't have a good plan. They're undercapitalized. And then when the going gets tough, they get the heck out of there.
Right. Last question, you guys. So with all of that said, you've got this process, this system down, wash, rinse, repeat. You could probably do it for the rest of your life if you choose. But the question I have for you, what's that future Brian look like? What are your passionates? Here's a question I love to ask people, because I think real estate's been great for you, and it will continue to be great, but I don't see that as the end all be all. I think in the beginning, it's fun, it's interesting, but like you said, once you get to the point where all of that shiny object stuff wears off and it becomes more of a routine, then it's like, meh, right? So the question I have for you, Brian, is what would you do that you love to do? You love it so much, you would do it for free. Because when you can do that, and then people that are monetizing that, that's like the double bonus, right? So what does that future Brian, it's like a double question. What does future Brian look like? And does he have that passionate? Have you considered that?
Yeah, I think the future Brian, I'm starting to move towards it. So like I've sold half my rental portfolio. Because like the flipping business, like you're essentially on a hamster wheel, right? If I stop flipping, the money stops coming in. Right. The rental is less passive. Owning rentals, for listeners, is not passive income, like the books say. You're managing, so you're either managing a management company, or like it's not. Don't believe the books. It's not. Owning rentals is not passive. So, but it is a great way to build long-term wealth. So I guess backing up to answer your question, Patrick, sorry. I'm going to transition to more truly passive investments that have a specific rate of return requirement that check the boxes. I've done some of that has been hard because I lose control investing in those type of investments. So it's been an adjustment for me, but I'm starting to transition to some of that. I'll probably do more of that. I'll still continue lending. That's fun. But I think at some point the flipping will slow down. I'll do more joint ventures and participate less actively in that way. What would I do long term that I absolutely love doing? I love consulting with small business owners and making them more profitable. I did some of that recently and made some pretty big impacts in a short period of time. And that was a lot of fun. And what I realized is like, I would really love to build businesses and then get out of the way and back out. I don't really like operating them.
Okay.
So if I can go in there, either help tweak someone's business to make it more profitable, or work on building another business and then handing it off and getting out of the way, that would be fun. I don't want to keep operating. I'll let someone else do that. I don't know. I'm not really a great operations guy. Or other people can do a lot better than I can.
Okay.
So it doesn't, it's not super enjoyable for me. So cool. Yeah, that's hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that was a good answer. I like the part because, a few years back, once I got bored with the house flipping stuff, I started to ask myself, what is my legacy? What's my make a difference? What's the next chapter for my life? What am I going to do that I would love to do that I'll do for free? This podcast is one thing, right? And I've got some other things. I've created a foundation. I got to figure out how to get that going, a charity and things of that nature. And just totally, I'm like, okay, this is probably my last big chapter. I'm in give back mode. And I'm so grateful for all the help that you've given me, all the help Zelda's given me, been there to support me and encourage me. And I'm like, man, I'm going to finish strong. Right.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And giving is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
We do a bunch in our local community, and I never, like, when you give, you don't give to receive, right? It's just, you just give to give, and it is what it is. And like, we've just gotten so much back as a result of it.
Yeah.
Stuff that we've never expected, experiences that our kids have had. And it's been very impactful and a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, there you have it, guys and gals. Wow. Definitely go back, listen to this one, watch it once we get our YouTube channel up and running, because Brian, you dropped a ton of wisdom in this episode here. So we really appreciate you coming on. I'm so glad.
Yeah, you bet.
Yes, it's been fabulous.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. So great getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
To just know your story, and
yeah. Well, thanks for having me on your show, and best of luck.
Well, thank you.
All right.
And as always, thank you in advance.
Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing, yeah. Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. Yeah, we're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. We're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. We're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing